Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kamari Ellis. This is the Finance Rebel Show. Today, we are doing something a little bit different. Y'all know I normally go live on Wednesdays and Saturdays, but today I wanted to have a conversation because the landscape is shifting and it's shifting for the worse as it relates to this new Supreme Court nomination. I've been talking about it a lot, and it seems like a lot of people don't understand the gravity or the importance of this moment. But just to kind of rewind and give you a little bit of context, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who had been on the Supreme Court for a long time advocate, long time fighter for equal rights, had died. She died a few weeks ago. And at the time, I said, you know what? We are effed. And a lot of people said, why are we effed? And they didn't understand. And I said, because I know the current administration, Mr. Lord Cheeto Hitler himself, is in office, is going to try to ram down another Supreme Court nomination. And many said, no, that's not going to happen. But sure enough, we are in day 2 of the confirmations for the new nominee, Amy Bryant something, who is another Trumpette, another leader, another follower in the Trump mission and the right-wing mission to take over America and actually make it worse. So their job is to make America worse, not make America great again. So I wanted to talk about that today, but I wanted to talk about it in a little bit deeper fashion that I can do, right? So I'm bringing on my buddy, my friend, Danielle Patterson, who's a lawyer, who's very political, who understands the systems. And our job today is to break down these systems and how they will potentially be harmful to us, what we should be looking out for, what could be the next changes that are coming about, and what we can do to prepare ourselves. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Danielle on, and we're going to have a great conversation about how is the Supreme Court change going to shift access to wealth as we go forward. Hi, Danielle. How you doing?
Kamari.
Happy Tuesday. Is it Tuesday or Monday? I've been losing track of days.
Yes, today is Tuesday. We are on day 2 of the Amy Coney Barrett Judiciary Committee nomination process, because it's a 2-stage process. So, there's a lot going on. It's all the interesting stuff. And of course, they changed the schedule today because when I told you I had time, I wanted to make sure that Kamala had already had her opportunity to comment and do the initial 30-minute questioning. And of course, now they pushed her back to 2:15. So unfortunately, we will not have that to talk about so far. But we kind of can guess where it's going based on the introduction yesterday. So let's talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, we got to do something, right? Because I don't want nobody coming for us. You say Kamala. Her name is Kamala. And it seems like all the AKAs are very stirred about us saying her name right.
Did I just say Kamala?
I don't know. I've been hearing it so many different ways.
Oh, I'm like, no. Her name is
right.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Kamala. Not Kamala, not Kamala. It's Kamala. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, for everybody that's watching, do us a favor, like, comment, and share this, because we're fighting against the algos. Share this out. There's a lot of people that need this information. There's a lot of people that don't understand what's going on. A lot of people don't understand that this is a matter of life and death, literally.
Absolutely.
Without further ado, Danielle, let people know who you are and why you're even qualified to talk about this.
Oh, well, hi, everybody. I am attorney Danielle Patterson. I am a practicing attorney in my 21st year of practice. I don't even know how that's possible, but here I am. I'm a Philadelphia native, West Philly born and raised. It has been very important to me to continue to reside in and support the community that I was born into so that we can see, we can see ourselves more than just scratching and surviving. I want to see us thriving out here. And so one of the things that I have done is try to make legal representation accessible to people who look like me from our community, not just in Center City, but also out in our community. And also you got to kind of keep your nose to the ground and your ears to the ground to really know what's impacting people and how you can really offer them assistance. And one of those things that I do is try to educate people around the legal process, the court process, and how the law can actually work for you. A lot of times we say, oh, well, the law, that people are, Black people especially, we're afraid of the law. And we're afraid of the law because, unfortunately, we have not been in a situation where we've made it work for us. And a lot of the reason it's not working for us because we don't understand it. So I try to make it, I try to bring you the real deal on a level that anybody can understand. So that's what I'm here for. And hopefully we're going to get some good questions out there in social media land, because this is a biggie and people don't realize that this is the real reason that you always need to vote in every election. You need to vote for your president, but you also need to make sure that when we get Biden in office, because I'm speaking into an existence, because when we get the Biden-Harris ticket into office, y'all can't abandon them in 2 years like y'all did with Obama, and then we right back in the same position, okay? So I got to talk to you now, because we're going to keep fighting the good fight past the presidential election. We voting twice a year, every year from now on. This is what we're doing now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you said that, because yes, there's an election every 6 months, and voting is important. Voting is paramount, but there's deeper things to voting. First and foremost, we got to stay informed so we know what to vote for.
Yes.
And we know what the issues are. And so that's why we're talking here today. Now, normally I talk about money. Y'all get my little rants now and again about politics, but today we're going to talk about the crossover between politics and money, because people don't realize politics really is about money. And oftentimes
politics is about power.
Yes.
And in order to get the power, you need the money. That's basically what it is. So we're trying to get the power to make more money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I mean, you're right, because many people think you have to have money first to get the power, and it doesn't always work that way. It can work a couple of different ways, right? But again, I was thinking about this, and I'm like, where the community is at right now in terms of where we were 100 years ago. This conversation about voting, not voting, being powerless versus having power, fighting for our rights because we're here, is very much reminiscent of the W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington argument that happened over 100 years ago. And when you look at it, they both were right. There was no wrong in that situation, but we still are taking polar opposites of the argument and really not seeing what's really at stake here. But without further ado, let's jump into the Supreme Court issue. Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I want to start here. Kamari, I'm sorry.
No,
and I just want to remind everybody, okay? People don't understand how important judges are, and we kind of ignore it. And that's kind of what the Republicans are trying to get you to do, even when it's coming to this particular nomination. If you're watching it, they're trying to belittle it and bemoan it like this is no big deal. This is just what we do, and it's really not going to impact you. And they're trying to keep it very, very hypothetical and theoretical on some higher plane. But what I want everybody out there to know is this: there is no time that you come before the courts that's a good day. Okay. When you go to see your lawyer, it's not a good day. You have a problem and you need somebody to fix it. And when a law comes before the Supreme Court, it's because there's a problem that somebody believes needs to be fixed. And if we do not have a totally independent judiciary, then what we have is a real problem. And what they're doing right now is they argue, oh, you're making it political. And I'm really going to give you the radicals, because I like calling them radicals since they want to call me the liberals. The radicals, they're not conservatives, because them the real radicals. The radical Republicans want you to believe that this is just process, but it's not just process. And we've got to know that we've got to make sure that we have people in office who are appointing judges who understand who we are as a society, where we come from, as well as where we want to be, what our problems are. So I just want to kind of give you that little background, because it is such a problem going on right now. And I'm sure, if you're somebody, I was actually watching this start out with somebody who's really not really up on what the courts do. And the questions that he actually asked me about what the court do, what the court does, excuse me. Let me know that when Kamari kind of gave me a call and asked me was I interested in talking about it, that it was definitely a conversation that needed to be had. So I just wanted to just kind of give you that background, Kamari, and I'm here for the questions. Let's go.
No. I just wanted to say, Ruth Bader Ginsburg had been fighting a long fight with cancer for quite some time. I mean, I think it was publicly known that she was literally trying to hold on until after the election. She was really fighting the fight, but subsequently she wound up transitioning and going to heaven or transitioning to the afterlife. And now we are left with this vacancy in the Supreme Court. Many people didn't think the Republican administration, Republican Party will push to get a nominee on the Supreme Court as fast as they have. But I said that this was going to happen, and it absolutely happened.
Well, of course they were going to push. The entire Republican platform has been about sustaining power, sustaining, and that's where you can get it wrong.
I understand that. You understand that. But many people that we talk to, that's in our audience, that's in our sphere of friends, they don't understand that, right? So today, I was hoping that we could kind of put it where the goats can get it and just kind of break it down simple and plain. Okay. So let's start with, what in the world is the Supreme Court and why is it important?
Okay, so the Supreme Court is the supreme law of the land. That's basically it. The justices who are on the Supreme Court right now, 9. However, there is nothing in the Constitution which dictates how many people actually have to be in the Supreme Court. So it just has to be an odd number so they can make a decision. Okay, that's really where that comes from. 9 has been the number. However, it's gone as low as 7 and as high as 10. So please know that, people. It's not, there is nothing in the Constitution that says there are 9 justices of the Supreme Court. That's just the way it's been. Okay, so what the Supreme Court does is they hear cases that have to do something with constitutional law. They hear cases that have to do with our government and how we work, meaning what does the president, okay, so I'll give you a good example. President Trump basically has been saying, I can do whatever because I'm the president. That's basically where he's been. That's a question, a political question that the Supreme Court would actually decide. They wouldn't have to wind their way up through, state court to federal court to the Supreme Court. They actually make the decision of first impression when it comes to things like that. Whether or not Trump has to pay his taxes or disclose them, that is something that the Supreme Court will handle. Other things that the Supreme Court handles are things about a constitutional question. So a constitutional question is right now, whether or not Roe v. Wade was decided on the right guidelines. So we all talk about our constitutional rights, and I got to step in here because I done heard so much about what our constitutional right is in the last 8 months. Everything is our constitutional right, and it's really not. I don't have to wear a mask because it's my constitutional right. So there's nothing in the Constitution about your mask, baby. There really is not. Roe v. Wade, what it is your constitutional right to privacy. So when Roe v. Wade was being argued and had wound its way up through the courts, the decision had become that it was a private matter, and your right to privacy is a constitutional right. So the drafters of that kind of made it constitutional. Very similar, the Affordable Care Act. When President Obama was drafting that legislation, what he did was make it a tax because the federal government has the right to tax. And that way we didn't have these problems with whether or not it was constitutional, because you have a constitutional right to tax, which is how it didn't go immediately to the Supreme Court for a decision. It had to wind its way up with the application of the laws. The other place where the Supreme Court would step in is when they are laws about our foreign dignitaries, so whether or not something is treasonous, those things would go to the Supreme Court. So, and they are the final appellate issue. So if you have a city issue, it can theoretically make its way. If the Supreme Court decided that it wanted to hear it, it could make its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court also gets to decide what cases it's going to hear. They can deny something called certiorari, which means that certiorari, yeah, that's right, making sure I say it correctly. They can deny it or they grant it. That's cert denied. And we'll see that all the time. That's, is that we'll see that, oh, well, the Supreme Court is going to hear, which is why we know what's on the Supreme Court calendar. The Supreme Court calendar comes out every summer. Arguments start in November. So this is why this is very, very important, because the Supreme Court calendar opens up the Monday after the Tuesday of the election, as far as their calendar as to what they're going to hear. The decisions will all come down about 6 months later in April. Okay, and that's when it becomes precedent and the ultimate law of the land. So Danielle could be in the Senate and Kamari could be in the House, and we get together and we pass this law, and Biden, because we still going with that, is the president, and Biden signs it into law. It gets challenged. Because it's, somebody thinks it's unconstitutional that they should not have to wear their mask, because we're going to go there because Biden's going to win and he's going to give us a federal mask mandate. And so what happens is it's going to wind its way on up through, and it has to go through all the appeals court. Now, I know y'all know we didn't talk about previously, like criminal charges, that's a state case, but then it would go to your Superior Court and Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. Well, then you could actually appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States saying that your rights have been violated. Or if we talk about like RICO status and with the mandatory minimum sentencing, it's been making its way up through the courts of appeal, the federal courts of appeal, and they could land in the Supreme Court. So that's basically what the Supreme Court does. And once the Supreme Court actually makes the decision, it is officially law and cannot be challenged on the same grounds. So example, going back to Affordable Care Act.
Hold on, don't get too deep.
I'm sorry.
I just want to ask the question before we get too far. All cases must start at the state and local level, and then they ascend to the federal and Supreme Court level. Is that the order?
I mean, if the president fighting about something, it could go straight to the SCOTUS.
Okay, straight to the SCOTUS.
Yeah.
But average everyday citizens start locally and then ascend up, move up.
Yes, either it starts either at a trial court somewhere, either a trial court civilly in state court or civilly in federal court, makes its way up to whatever that court of appeals is. So if you were in Pennsylvania, you would go from 7th Street down there down to 6th and Walnut, where you would then go to the 3rd Circuit Court of Appeals, where you would then go to the Supreme Court. If you were in the state system, you would go to City Court, Court of the Commonwealth versus Danielle, up to Superior Court, up to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and then you would try to get certiorari. You would try to get cert granted to the Supreme Court on your issue.
And then so the president can just bypass all that, and he can start at the federal level because he is handling federal issues, correct?
Well, no, not because he's handling federal issues. So there are federal questions. So questions that determine the absolute law of the land. And they are very specific about treason, about, very, very, the federal question. Is it involving something called a federal question? And I'd be explaining federal questions forever. But okay.
No. Yeah, I understand. And there's something, like you said, Supreme Court will determine the law of the land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And, you said we should all vote every 6 months or so. And you kind of said this, but I hear a lot of people say this. It's more important to vote at the local level than it is at the federal level. And it's kind of driving me crazy, especially in the context of today, because Congress, the Senate, or the House and the Senate and the president all are helping to dictate what the law of the land is, which cities and states are subject to, because everybody's running around. They're touting this Republican point that all the Democratic cities are terrible because they're under Democratic lead. They, however, leave out of this conversation that all of these Democratic cities were affected by federal law in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times those federal laws didn't come from Democrats. They came from Republicans. But nobody wants to talk about that.
Well, let me explain to you why I say it's more important at the local level. Because when we get to those questions that are going to make their way to the Supreme Court, they're all because we got bad legislators at the local and state level. Bad laws being made that can be challenged. So what happens is those laws are being made and challenged. They then make their way up to the Supreme Court, and then they become the law of the land. So example, what's getting challenged? What's getting challenged? Just thinking about it, voter suppression in Texas. Well, voter suppression in Pennsylvania, gerrymandering in Pennsylvania, gerrymandering in Ohio.
Tell them what gerrymandering is. Tell them what gerrymandering is.
I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. Gerrymandering. So, okay. So an example is previously I ran for state rep. this year in the 190th legislative district in Pennsylvania. The 190th legislative district in Pennsylvania is the largest population district in the state of Pennsylvania, but yet they only get one state rep seat. Whereas, in Luzerne County, where the entire county doesn't have 50,000 people, the 190th district of Philadelphia has 70,000 people, and the representation is exactly the same number of people. And that means that we, the mob, are being ruled by the elite. And so what happens is that what they do is they will outline and carve parts of the state that they know they can't win. So an example is there are, and I'll give you this one, okay? So an example is the last gerrymandering made an entire Republican district in Northeast Philadelphia. That's what gerrymandering did. So even though the registrants of Democrats actually outnumber the registrants of Republican, what they did was they cut a line, okay, I was really on 53rd Street and I would just go straight up, but I'm not. I'm going to cut over to Coshocton State Road because that's Republican, and I'm going to come back around by Belmont and be in the park. And that's what happens. So they carve it out so that it benefits the party who's doing the carving. And in this case, we have a Republican-controlled House, and we've had one for many years. Yes, many years. So and they've been in control of after our last two censuses. And I hope that all of you got your census documents in, because what they did was, based on what those census documents are, is how those districts go. And so that's what they did. So they made it so I'm sure you see this. This is a safe Democratic seat, or this is a safe Republican seat. And the reason they know it's safe is because they made sure that people who don't think like them don't live there, even if you live across the street from the same people. And right. A so better example,
they manipulate the lines so that they can kind of almost guarantee to win elections.
But what has happened, just thinking about the state of Pennsylvania, and I'm sure you all know, Delco's turning blue, because as West Philadelphians move further out of the city, the mix, they can't get that line together. So Delco is turning blue. Parts of Bucks County are turning blue because people are moving. And I think, honestly, with telework now, I think the lines are really going to get crossed, because one of the biggest benefits of living in the city is being close to work. And when you can work from home, people are moving further and further out. So that's going to be very, very interesting with the gerrymandering question.
Right. Now, I just want to, everybody, this is the Finance Rebel Show. And y'all, this is actually a national show. A lot of people do watch locally here in Philadelphia, but we have people from all over the states. But listen, as you hear these definitions and these analogies, just kind of put them in contrast with where you live. Some of the big boulevards, big streets where you live as well. But do us a favor, share this out. Again, like I said, I'm fighting against the algorithms. This is information that everybody can use, no matter where you are throughout the entire United States. Again, I'm Kamari Ellis. This is attorney Danielle Patterson, ESQ. Don't forget the ESQ. It's very important. And we're just going to kind of break down some of the issues today as it relates to the Supreme Court. Now, just to kind of put a period on that, I don't disagree that local is heavy, Danielle, but what I'm learning is that, and I'm sorry to say this, people will take one thing and just blow it out of context. So when we say the only elections that matter are local, then people will say, well, you know what? I'm not going to the booth this day because it's not a local election. Now, we know historically presidential elections tend to turn out more. But with the sentiment that we're seeing now, I think anything's possible. And so I'm saying all elections matter, right? Because
I said, we're voting twice a year, every year. Twice a year, every year.
Like Danielle brought up earlier, on the local level, we have a lot of judge seats, a lot of DA seats. They matter, right? They're not popular, but they matter. They matter. I can't tell you how much they matter. They matter a lot.
Actually, I'm going to tell you how much they matter because it's an issue with Amy Coney Barrett right now. Okay, so you take Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, our judicial seats are elected. Okay, so what happens generally, before we started just adding anybody to the court, because Clarence Thomas was the first example of we were just adding anybody to the court. I'm going to just be honest, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. I'm gonna explain why in a minute. But previously, what happened was that they would look at people who were already sitting judges somewhere. So that fact that judges are running in your local races are very, very important now, because you need to make sure you're creating a pipeline of people who are going to be on the federal bench, the third courts of appeals, and who could possibly be considered for SCOTUS. Now, the reason I said that this is now an issue, because Amy Coney Barrett has actually only been a judge for 2 years. And her first time being a judge she was actually appointed by President Trump. And she was appointed by President Trump after they would not do the nomination process at all, Mitch McConnell, for the woman who was actually nominated by President Obama. So the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals is actually the least diverse court of appeals in the United States. And we were finally going to get a person of color. It was a Black woman who was nominated when Mitch McConnell decided that he was not going to even have confirmation hearings. Now, that young woman was already a sitting judge. That's important. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Amy Coney Barrett had never been a judge before. And as a matter of fact, she had spent her entire career in academia. She had only ever worked as an attorney for about 3 years prior to going over to Notre Dame School of Law, where she was teaching. That's very, very important. How do you get real life experience with deciding cases if you're not trying cases, if you're not actually actively working in the courts, if you aren't coming hand to hand with the individuals who are most impacted by the laws that you are going to oversee and give opinions on and create precedent? That's when I say about the qualifications issue. That started with Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas actually had never been a judge before he was actually put into the Supreme Court. He was like a hearings officer judge at the EEOC. That's where he came from. So therefore, he had never again had interactions with individuals who were out facing the court system. And do you really want judges who are that far removed and that detached from who America really is today? That's one of the biggest questions surrounding Amy Coney Barrett right now. How is she going to be able to navigate the waters of who the United States is and who the United States represents?
Yeah. I mean, that's big. But she was nominated by Trump.
Yes.
And now she's being nominated by Trump again.
In just 2.5 years.
In just 2.5 years. And she really didn't have any other kind of judicial or law experience.
Yes, her entire career has been the theoretical practice of law, meaning the ivory tower practice where I sit and I make decisions. Now, what's most interesting about Amy is that she was previously Justice Scalia's law clerk.
Now, who's Justice Scalia?
So Justice Scalia is the gentleman who died when Obama had nominated Merrick Garland. Okay, so take it back 4 years, and we were in the exact same situation, except then it happened in February. So Antonin Scalia, very, very conservative, of Italian heritage, very conservative, very right-leaning. And so when he was a very prolific writer, he was a very prolific dissenter, meaning sometimes, and this is now important, sometimes when the judges don't win, they still write scathing dissenting opinions. And then we're like, who cares? Who reads that? Well, every lawyer in the country is reading it, because those dissenting opinions tell you where to get the next case. Those are the guidelines on where to get the next case. And if y'all weren't paying attention, just about 8 days ago, Clarence Thomas gave us a scathing dissenting opinion, basically telling us how to attack the gay marriage. That's what he did. So out the blue, in a dissenting opinion, told you about why it was illegal. And do y'all really think there's not somebody out there creating what we call a test case? So I'm going to explain that, because everybody's trying to pretend like these things don't happen. So I just told you that, cases wind their way up, and that's how they get to the Supreme Court. So Judge Barrett is now basically trying to say, well, I can't just overturn Roe v. Wade and because a case would have to come before me. Well, doesn't really work like that. And I'm going to take it back for you all to something that is near and dear to our hearts, which is the civil rights movement. Okay. So when Thurgood Marshall and NAACP decided to put Rosa Parks on the bus, yes, they decided to put her there. As you all know, there was another young lady who was a single mom, unwed, and darker complected, less educated, that had already been boycotting. She'd already been kicked off the bus. Well, the NAACP saw this as an issue that could make its way to Supreme Court. So they had to find the perfect candidate to actually make a test case. And that was Rosa Parks, who was already a secretary at the NAACP, but she was educated. She was from a wealthier background. She was steadfast in her community. Basically, there was nothing that you could be able to say bad about that sister, because you know that when we're dealing with law cases, it all becomes about who you are and who you know. We forget all about the actual important facts. Well, so they basically made a test case. That's what it was. That was a test case to challenge previously would it come down to Plessy v. Ferguson, separate but equal, those things. So they're going to be test cases. And if anybody's actually watching the confirmation hearings, Senator Whitehouse from Vermont actually laid it all out. I have friends who are very, very, proud of saying, and they're fond of saying, follow the money and keep your eyes on the board. Well, Senator Whitehouse actually brought the board with him, and he actually outlined how the dark money actually is ruling the world and determining what cases are going to get before the Supreme Court and determining who's going to be deciding those cases. They spent $250 million in the last 9 years on restructuring. We'll call it restructuring the court to make it more conservative, not just at the Supreme Court level, but everywhere. I'm sure you all have recognized that Trump has been the most prolific nominator to the Supreme Court in the history of our judicial system. Over 300 federal judges have been packed in under Trump. 50 have made it to the courts of appeal. Not one has been African American. So therefore, we're definitely creating a dearth of people who have similar experiences.
But why does that matter? Like, just for your average everyday person, why does that matter that he's packing the courts?
Well, it matters because if we are right-leaning, if we are radical in all of our ideas, meaning we, the judges, then what you're going to get is radicalized opinions. It does not matter. And people are saying, oh, the justices are separate. Well, they know who put them there. It is really ridiculous for Judge Barrett to now say that she's not going to overturn Roe v. Wade when she's in fact been donating to a super PAC to overturn Roe v. Wade, when she's actually been a spokesperson who's written about why you should overturn Roe v. Wade. So now she wants to say, well, there's no case before me. Well, there's no case before you yet, but if you get on the court, I can tell you right now, we're going to have a case in less than 2 years. Because don't forget, the judges are a lifetime appointment. So this ain't a mistake that you make right now. Amy Coney Barrett is not 50 years old. She can be on this court for another 35 years easy.
But let's back up for a minute. Let's just say what it is, right? So Roe v. Wade typically protects the woman's right for abortion. So you're saying that abortion could be under attack, right? And this isn't for or against, right? We're just talking about the facts here. So if a young lady gets raped and she doesn't want to have a baby, that could be changed. That could be challenged. Is that correct or incorrect?
Well, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we actually, you may not know, but in the late 90s, early 2000s, Pennsylvania had some of the strictest abortion regulations on it, as far as what you could do and what not, what you couldn't do about. That's when they started all that, the trimester, and don't do this trimester, and it could be this trimester. Well, that was under Bob Casey, because as you know, our governor, Bob Casey, was very anti-abortion. Okay, fine. He was a very pro-life Democrat. And this was challenged. And although Bob Casey's law actually was determined to be unconstitutional, so they took all that. It couldn't be if there was a heartbeat and it was the fifth week on the second day. It couldn't go. They took all that away. But guess who wrote the dissenting opinion in the Casey case? Judge Antonin Scalia. And at the time that he wrote that opinion in that scathing dissent, guess who was his law clerk? Judge Amy Coney Barrett. So for her to say today that she's absolutely coming to this court with no preconceived notions and no issues and no swayings or leanings about Roe v. Wade is just truly disingenuous.
So let's back up real quick. She actually said during the confirmations, the start of the confirmations yesterday, that she had no axe to grind, no agenda, and anything else. And what you're telling us is from her history, her background, and the context in which she has gotten to the court, more than likely that ain't true, correct?
Ain't no more than likely, okay?
Well, I'm trying to be unbiased. All right.
Ain't no more than likely. Not only that, the Republican platform has been, we are going to nominate judges to the courts who are going to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, who are going to decimate civil rights, or they like to call them affirmative action plans, and that we are going to make sure that Roe v. Wade is overturned.
Right. And the reason I ask that question is a lot of times people don't feel or see the importance of the political process with elected officials because it's not glaring in front of their face, and they're not keeping track of some of the moves that have happened prior to kind of dictate and tell you what a person's or a people's behavior is going to be going forward. But like you just talked about,
definitely chess, not checkers.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times, this is unfortunate, right? If it has nothing to do with me, then I'm kind of not paying attention.
And it has nothing to do with you right now.
And that's the problem. We're too immediate in our needs. As I'm like, I actually said this the other day. I'm like, I kind of want to be a Republican. And not that I want to be a Republican, but I want to be so singularly laser focused on one issue that I am willing to just forsake all others. Really. They don't care anything about about Trump's taxes. They don't care whether or not he's a racist. They don't care whether or not, he had a mistress that he was paying off with campaign funds. They don't care about any of that. They wanted radical conservative judges on the court, and he got them for them. So as far as they're concerned, he's been a very successful president.
And I'll say this, a lot of this is predicated on the changing landscape of America. Everybody knows that Black and brown people will outnumber everyone else by, I want to say it's 2030 or 2035. I always forget the exact.
2032. That was the projection for 2032.
2032. Okay. And so they're worried about that. They're worried about where they want to lead. I mean, many of them have publicly said as much. So what do? They say, we're going to pack the courts now. We're going to change the laws now. So within a generation, we are still going to be protected. So again, it's not always going to be glaring in your face what the move is, where they're going, but you can tell and you can see what's going on.
I try to remind people that Dred Scott and Plessy v. Ferguson came down in 1896. And in response to...
Tell them what Dred Scott and Ferguson is.
Separate but equal, meaning that we could go to the back of the, we could be on the train, but we got to be in a separate car because as long as we had equal accommodations, it was fine.
And what was Dred Scott?
Dred Scott, the decision about our representation as people. So what happened? It took 56 years for Brown versus the Board of Education to come along and start really the civil rights movement. 56 years before we actually got changed and we were counted as a whole person, not a 3/4 person, that our vote was equal, and that we were considered to be to have equal access and application of laws under the law. Because don't forget, just because the slaves got free did not mean that the slaves were free.
Right. But, again, so typically a generation is 20 years, right? So we're talking 2.5 generations that it took to unchange some of that change that was there. And not to say that it changed all the hearts and minds of the people of the land, but at least got some level of protection. And
Mhm.
that's what a lot of people, in my opinion, get wrong when they analyze civil rights, when they analyze Martin Luther King, when they analyze just some of the moves in the past. We complain about marching, we complain about protesting. But listen, if none of that happened, we probably would not be able to have this conversation right now, broadcasting to you, because we would not have the access to the internet or the access to these platforms. So now things have changed some, but just like anything else, racism has changed and evolved as well. So we always had to stay on top of things. We always had to keep our ball to the, or our eye to the streets and what's going on with people, laws, and overall in politics. Excuse me. But there's always something, because yes, sad to say, there are people that don't like people that look like me, you, and Danielle. And is that right or wrong? I think it's wrong, but it's the reality. And we always have to face that reality dead on. So we can't just be, we just can't focus on, let's say, money, right? Because I hear a lot of people say, well, forget politics, we can only face money. And that's why I kind of brought that up earlier. Money can be eliminated with a pen stroke with law.
Mhm.
And so once we get the money, we also have to be able to protect the money. And so again, when I talk about the Booker T. Washington, W.E. Du Bois conversation, it's kind of the same thing, because we're only looking at one side of it, and we're only looking to progress one side of it, and that's the quote unquote wealth inclusion. But then we're not looking to protect that. And so we all applaud and love Black Wall Street or Tulsa or the Greenwood section of Tulsa, but we never think about, well, how did Tulsa even happen? Right? It was a political thing that turned
Mhm.
into a race riot. And so since we didn't have representation or protection under the law, that was why that was able to happen. And not to say that it won't happen again, but the likelihood of it lowers, the probability of it lowers when we have representation, when we have representation or and protection of the law there. And I just wish more people understood that.
Well, we don't understand it because unfortunately we are people who have not been in power. So when you have not been used to power, we get so we start having an affair with the idea of power, meaning we get a little bit of it and we don't understand that bigger picture. We don't understand how to grow that. It's the same thing that we're having with wealth. Is that we are generally first generation wealth builders, but we don't recognize that, and we're not able to take our wealth to make it multi-generational for those same reasons. So it's really no different. So the same. How is it that as a people we accumulate this wealth and we grow it? And meaning, how do we grow our power and our influence to be able to make sure that our agenda continues to be met? Well, how do we do that? One, we have to educate ourselves. And I don't just mean educate ourselves like on Facebook. I mean educate ourselves and get to know our leaders. That has been one of the problems. People ask me all the time, who is our W.E.B. Du Bois? Who is our Booker T. Washington? Who is, our Malcolm X or our Martin? We don't actually know that. Another thing is that people go, oh, well, we had to have our, we can't get together until we have a black agenda. We need to stop voting for people that don't have black agenda. Well, we don't have black agenda. We kind of, I don't, was there like a black meeting and I didn't get invited. Like we had a vote. Did we have a vote card? I don't know.
So I'll say this. I don't think we need a Malcolm X or a Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois. I think there's many of them amongst
Mm-hmm.
us now. It's a different time. We all
Mm-hmm.
need to become leaders. We all need to become educated. And like Danielle said, education doesn't just end and begin on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Like go in and
And
check
not
out
just with
some history.
ourselves.
Yeah, go read some history, right? But the other thing is that I'm really frustrated when people say they want an agenda from some white power or some white establishment. We should be creating our own agenda. Yes, I agree. We
Exactly.
need our own agenda, but listen, outside folks can dictate our agendas. The Jewish community doesn't have Italians come in and dictate their political and economic agenda. They don't do that. They do it amongst themselves. So, this is sadly, it's not a practical thing. It's more of an ideological thing. We need to unite. How do we unite? I don't know, because we have so many differences and we can be really petty about certain things. But all of these other groups can unite. And I know everybody's going to say, well, we're not a monolith. No people are a monolith. Jewish people are absolutely not a monolith. But they figure out what issues they want to unify around. I call them those unifying issues. They stick to those and they get business done.
So, we are not a monolith, but what do we know that we have in our community? We know that we've got an overwhelming issue with violence. We know that we have an overwhelming issue with poverty. We know, and this is the thing, our violence is coming out of the poverty. Our violence comes out of our lack of access to education to uplift ourselves out of poverty. So these are, so then we determine what it is, how do we want to attack it? Now, not how.
I gotta say this. Our poverty also comes as a result of political policy as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So that's why I feel, what's that?
To keep us impoverished.
Yes. To create poverty and to keep us impoverished. Yes, absolutely.
Well, I tell everybody, do you know how many poverty pimps make it off our back? There's always an inclusion program, a diversity training, and they make millions of dollars on funding to help us, not help ourselves. We're going to build a corridor. We're going to teach them how to do whatever. But then it never seems to work. But somebody still got $10 million.
Yep. So let's get back to the Supreme Court. So it looks like Judge Amy is going to get appointed. How is that going to, specifically potentially change the landscape for Black folks, especially as it results to Black wealth?
Okay, so the very first thing that keeps us poor is our health disparity. It actually is. We're spending more money on medications. We don't have access to health care. We're in poorer health. And that we don't have access to education to how to help us to uplift our own health, how to better our own health. Well, the Affordable Care Act actually changed that and was making significant inroads. The Affordable Care Act goes down the drain, and now what we've got is our pre-existing conditions are not covered. We also have the lifetime caps on benefits. That's really significant because we got this thing running around right now called COVID. And COVID is going to be a pre-existing condition. So all of you who've had tests and COVID tests and they've come back positive and you say, hey, I've recovered. Well, I'm going to tell you how that recovery going to work. In 12 years, your left toe going to fall off on your, I'm just saying it's going to be a little toe. And they're going to tell you that's because you got COVID back in 2000 and we ain't covering your prosthetic because you had a pre-existing condition. And you're like, what are you talking about? Yeah, well, you had COVID and the research now shows that people that had COVID, their left toe falls off. Well, you know what else? We know that people that have COVID also have eye issues now. They have hearing issues. People are going deaf that had COVID. They are now telling you that your lungs will look like somebody who smoked for 20 years because you had COVID. So all of these things are going to start happening. We're going to start getting denials from cover, which is going to put us further into poverty. Because what is the second biggest reason for bankruptcy, Kamari?
Healthcare costs.
Exactly.
Healthcare costs will literally rape you out of house and home. Will take everything from you. But
so that's one protection. So just looking at that one. Number two is that, and y'all got to look at the whole landscape. Now I'm going to just talk to y'all now because we're going to talk about the landscape of things that are going on, because when we talk about, following the board, you got to really connect these dots. Okay. I'm sure that you have all seen that, y'all remember, I don't forgot her name down there in Texas, but she was all upset because she didn't get into the law school because she had her white tears about not getting into law school. And so then she wanted to actually sue on reverse discrimination. She said that she was being discriminated against. Because generally with discrimination is that you have to be in power to be able to be discriminated. You have to be not in power, the powering party, to be discriminated against. So meaning Black people can't legally discriminate against anybody. So what happens is that now It's not just her. We done heard all about Brock and how he, shouldn't have his life ruined because of, his racial incident. And all of these things now become that they are doing away with the affirmative action programs. They are doing right now. Harvard is being sued because they're not accepting enough white people. That's what they said, is that there should be more white people. They're accepting too many minorities. And so therefore white people are being discriminated against. And so Trump set out to fix that. And what did he do? He immediately said, you know what? There is no discrimination. I'm going to actually fight back against the 1619 project. And the entire project was really just here to teach in education something about systemic racism. Trump decided there is no systemic racism. And if you are teaching anything about systemic racism, we are going to pull your public funding. So we're going to pull your public funding. So that means all of those programs go away. Well, what else do we know? Just in the last couple of weeks, Wells Fargo told you they can't find no black folks to hire because, we're just not qualified. Kind of the same argument that they're actually making, because I'm sure y'all saw Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She had 100 clerks lined up to escort her casket. And guess what? There was not one black person amongst them. And that's because she hired exactly one black law clerk during her entire tenure on the court from 1993 to 2000. And the people who made excuses for that said it's because there were no qualified black people to actually be a law clerk to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So that becomes a problem. How do we get access? That means that our money and access to it are going to be diminished, because if Wells Fargo and Bank of America are not going to get clapback now and pushback because they're not hiring blacks, that means they're not going to hire black people. So that takes jobs for us off of the table. Also, systemic racism. We talk about those EEOC complaints, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. When we talk about how we've been discriminated against or not hired, well, Trump also said that, hey, you don't need an education anymore for your jobs. We're going to work on life experience. We immediately got excited. And I mean the population at large, and said, yeah, you don't need a college degree because I've been telling you college degrees are nothing. Well, Black women are the largest segment of education population in this country. So Black women, they said this was the bar. Black women went out and they cleared the bar plus some. So now what happens? They said, well, you don't need that education. All you need is the right connections, the right experience. Well, if we're not getting hired by Wells Fargo because, they don't have to hire us anymore, if we're not getting access in our local communities because we are no longer being funded, that means that our experience, we're never going to get those top jobs. And we as an entire community are going to suffer. So it is definitely, this is the real trickle down economics. Reagan's been trying to tell us that it's great if the rich people get rich, we're going to get rich. No. But I'm going to tell you this, the more power they get and the less power and the more power we have taken away, because it's really not about giving them power. It's really about taking our power, taking our resource and taking our recourse, meaning the courts. Because there are 4 key issues that they have actually been trying to make sure that they have trampled down on. One has been about who actually can contribute to a campaign, dark money. Because Citizens United, when they said, hey, we don't have to tell you who all is donating in these PACs. Well, guess what? These PACs got more and more powerful. Now, let me give you an example, just one you might have heard of. So remember when Bloomberg promised $1 billion to support Biden, the Democratic Party? Yeah, well, he started a PAC. And that's where his $1 billion went. And he's been spending it. Y'all see, we got the formerly incarcerated down in Florida who are getting their rights restored because they're paying in those commission funds. We've got the folks who are now getting registered to vote in Ohio and Pennsylvania. That's a part of that Bloomberg plan. That's very, very important. The second thing that the court has been, that the Republican Party in the courts have been very interested in, when you are looking beyond just the dark money, they have been very interested in civil rights and gutting that. The Civil Rights Act did not get refunded and rebranded. As we know, it didn't get passed again. The Civil Rights Act the Voting Rights Act went away. And immediately when the Voting Rights Act went away, what happened? We got voter suppression in Texas and Georgia and Alabama. We got redistricting and gerrymandering. That is very important because if they put us all together, they take away our power because we are going right back to the Jim Crow days when they, let one of you have a little job, but it's really power over nothing. And they're making sure that they continue to segregate us some more. The other thing that they've been determined is that they're going to get rid of Affordable Care Act. And then finally, abortion. Now let's talk about this thing with abortion just here. And so, there people say, wherever you come down on it, I'm going to say this, the hypocrisy. Because the people who are so pro-life are not pro-life, they're a pro-birth. Pro-lifers would not, how do you justify putting babies in cages? If you are pro-life, how do you justify children who get here and you don't want to give them access to medications, you don't want to give them access to food, and you don't want to give them access to education? No, you just want a population boom. That's how we're going to be impacted in specifically those 4 key areas. And then finally, where they really want to mess with your rights is all about the civil jury. And I'm gonna just really briefly, that we have a right to a jury trial here in the United States. And the jurors are not, rich folks. Matter of fact, rich folks get off the jury all the time, okay? The more educated you are, the more removed you are, you can make up more rules and reasons that you can get out of jury duty. And I'm sure that you all see this because you see it on TV. They're trying to get away from the jury trial. Everything is you're giving up your right to a jury trial. You want to put Nana in a nursing home, got to give your right to a jury trial. Here, you're going to go to arbitration. And the arbitrators are our 3 other rich right friends. They're the ones who are going to tell you whether or not Nana was beaten in the nursing home. Okay, so your kid got operated on, and this is very important because under the CARES Act, they have limited what you can actually seek money damages for in injuries with COVID. Did you know that, Kamari?
I did not.
Yes, they actually, while we were arguing about whether or not we were going to get pandemic unemployment assistance, they made sure they took away your right to sue. And so everybody's like, oh, well, they made everything COVID related because they just want to get money. No, they made everything COVID related so they could protect themselves from liability. So when you were still in the hospital, they did, because if it's COVID related, that means it's protected. So these are the things. And so now what they're trying to do is they're trying to enhance the arbitration clause, which is no longer are you going to get your jury of 12 or your jury of 8, because in civil court, it doesn't have to be 12. That number, which are usually people who look just like me and you, Kamari, and just like everybody who's online right now, that's who comes to your civil jury. And that's the reason that Johnson & Johnson gets hit for $1 billion for talc powder, powder. That's the reason that, AstraZeneca, who today actually told us about their drug. Was that yesterday? Sorry. AstraZeneca had to pull their drug. Eli Lilly stopped, and Johnson & Johnson there is an unknown and unforeseen complication with the new COVID vaccine that they want y'all to take, but they won't tell you what the unknown complication is. Is the unknown complication death? I don't know. But
they said somebody got sick and they couldn't figure out why.
Mm-hmm. No. So sick could be dead. Sick, you could have 3 eyes. Sick, your penis could fall off. A whole bunch of things could have happened. We don't know. Okay. I'm just saying. However, I would really say if the penis fell off, they would fix it real quick. Like they would definitely fix the drug. Okay. Now, that is one of the biggest things that I have learned in my 20 years of being a trial attorney is that penises are worth a lot of money and they get a priority. Okay.
Hey, listen. Penises matter.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. But the point of that is that vaginas do not. As a matter of fact, I actually had a case. And a young lady, her vagina was scarred and it was no longer, she couldn't, have sexual pleasure or anything, all because she went in to go and have like her cervical exam and they heated up the solution too hot and it burned all of her lady parts. And the answer was, well, she can still use them. So what if she can't have any pleasure? So, just saying, because, vaginas, as long as I can get my penis in your vagina, it's working and it's good. But that's just the way that works. Whereas I, had a penis enhancement case where it didn't get as big as they said it was going to get. And, he got $1 million. I'm just going to say that because, so what I learned is that penises are worth more than vaginas. But the point of that is that so they're trying to take away your right to a jury trial. And they're taking away the right to the jury trial because to them, that is letting the mob decide. See, we're the mob. I don't know if you all know that. Like, if you just take it back to the history of America, and that's when we get this electoral college thing, is that, we can't let the mob decide. Like, they'll just do anything. So, we're learned. And so it has to be about us and we have to make the final decision. That's where they got the electoral college from, because they were so afraid of the day 2032 was going to happen.
I agree. So hopefully everybody kind of got an understanding of what's going on with the Supreme Court. I mean, Danielle really put it where the ghosts can get it. Y'all should be able to understand some of the disparities in law application and law usage. But let's check in with some of these questions. I saw there was some. You know what? I'm going to start at this one first because obviously this is one of the radical attorneys. Well, you said you were radical, but then they called it trash. But Nick Gross Nickel, I don't know if you're still here, if you're not, but clearly you're not from my community. This conversation was for Black folks and how the Supreme Court is going to affect our community. And just by judging by your name, you're probably not one of us. And then you said this as well. You said, lies, Harvard's in trouble for discrimination against Asians. Well, Asians actually are people of color. Asians actually will fall into the conversation and what we're talking about to a large degree.
No, actually, just
wait. I know you're ready to go. Just give me a minute, right? However, yes, Asians have been suing Harvard because they've been getting unfair treatment as well. But that wasn't really what we're talking about, and I think you missed the overall context. But go ahead, Danielle.
No, actually, is that Nick want to talk about what's been going on for 3 years. I'm actually talking about new cases that were filed, and that the new cases are that Harvard is discriminating against white people and that they aren't putting enough white people into Harvard and that there are too many people of color. So, I just need you to keep up. I know it's 2020 and 20 things happen a day. I just need you to keep up what's going on today.
Yeah, but people don't care about that because they don't really care about context. But so just saying what's up to folks. Hello, Miss Edith. Hello, Wanda. Go CPNG. How you doing? Go CPNG had a question. As I said, when they asked the question, okay, so that's more of a local issue.
But I still can answer if you want me to.
But that's not for this. But go ahead.
No, it's not. What I'll just say, because hey, we don't know if we're going to get Go CPNG back. What I'll just say is that there are actually watchdog groups that follow it. But more importantly is that there's actually this thing called an election coming up on November 3rd. And one of the people that's running is the Auditor General. And the Auditor General is actually supposed to tell you whether or not the city at the state and the city have done what they want to do. If you're talking about the city of Philadelphia, then you need to head on over to Rebecca Reinhardt's office and you make sure that you get an accounting on the funds that were allocated to that process. That's how you find out.
But I don't think he's not from PA, I think, or she.
Okay, so every state has an auditor general. That's the oversight committee. And every city or municipality has a comptroller.
Okay, so contact one of those, comptroller, attorney general. Okay, so here's a question. Do judges or decision makers, when it comes to making a change in law, do they base a decision based on ongoing agenda or an ear from what the public wants?
Well, so this is interesting because this is one of Barrett's arguments today, is that so there's this whole malarkey that judges are totally in a bubble and that they have no clue what's going on in the world. That is untrue. Every single judge is taking their experience of their lifetime to the bench with them. So the easiest one right now really is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg had spent a lifetime fighting with the ACLU for women's issues. So if you really think that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was not going to take her women's issues thing, to the bench, then you were kidding. Okay, kidding yourself. The same thing is that Amy Coney Barrett, it has, again, she has written briefs about abortion and how it's wrong. She's told you that this is against her religion. She has also told you that she has to submit to the will of her husband in all decisions. That's what she said. And she has to think about those things. So to kind of temper that, the Republicans keep trying to say, well, she's a family woman with 7 kids and she adopted 2 kids and 2 black kids. And so that means that she is aware of what's going on out here in the streets. However, she said something very, very interesting to me today. She has an 11-year-old black son. And she said she had to have the talk with him in light of George Floyd. And all of the Republicans were like, oh, they were like, yes, you understand what's going on. And I said, no, you don't, because he made it to 11 without the talk.
Interesting. Hola, Tiffany. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for everybody for joining us as well. Good. How does one challenge a chair's interpretation of the law? I wasn't sure what you meant by chairs.
Yeah, I don't. You have to tell me what that is. Just
like which chair are we talking about? Are you talking about legal, elected official? Like what exactly are you talking about? Go CP&G. Definitely heard about the Democratic cities. Yeah,
well,
the
also,
lady that was running for Congress.
I got come on now. I got to talk about Miss Klasick. Hey, y'all, did y'all know that she was a stripper and that's where she met her husband, was at his strip club? That's who Klasick is. I'm not lying to you. It's a Baltimore strip club. I actually went back and researched this because, I can't spread the gossip. So Kim Klasick was a stripper and she met her husband, Klasick, there. He is a big donor to the Republican Party down in Baltimore. She does not live in Baltimore County. So this is that scuttlebutt. However, the issue is that Klasick's husband has actually spent all his money gentrifying those areas out and around Baltimore. So now by her, trying to run for office in Baltimore, they'd be able to push their real estate development into Baltimore. So you always got to follow that money. But they only showed you like, what is that thing, Greenwood in Baltimore? Like, they showed you like the street from The Wire. They didn't show you the street from across The Wire because as we know, even having watched 5 years of The Wire, that they were already gentrifying those areas. So Baltimore is not all a ghetto. They picked the 3 ghetto streets. And they also, if the camera had panned, go look at that commercial. If you look to the left, it's actually beautiful across the street, literally across the street from where she's walking.
Yep.
And she was threatening her stripper heels. I'm gonna just say, scuttlebutt. When I first saw it, I was like, "Ooh, homegirl is strutting in these heels." And then when I found out she was a stripper, it made so much sense.
No shame to sex workers, y'all.
That ain't a shame to a sex worker. I'm admiring the way she was walking in the heels.
Listen, I'm just putting it out there that we are fans of sex workers. We have
absolutely. No look. Do you know? I want them to be W-2 employees and get actual benefits, not that 1099 stuff going on in New York. So they were not able to get benefits when they got hurt back here with COVID.
We can debate that later. I would rather them be 1099. They have more power. They have more leverage in the tax code. But that's a whole nother conversation. Let's see. What's up, Mark? How you doing? Mark from Wichita is in the house. Our growth in many cases is limited because we are still dependent upon those outside of our community for raw materials. We must become larger manufacturers of goods to acquire largest amounts of wealth. I don't disagree with that, Mark. I think that's a great point.
I think it's a fabulous point. So now the first step of that is how do we get enough money to become manufacturers? That's the problem.
Actually, I have clients who do a lot of e-commerce.
Yes. I'm bringing it up in discussion.
But they're sourcing out of China.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I might be going off on a little bit of tangent. I'm just saying the possibility is there, and it might not cost as much as we probably see. But to your point, Danielle, we definitely do need more pooled money, and we need more access to capital overall. All right. So Wanda says we have those issues due to how government has stacked the debt. Yes, but remember, I'll say this right. We also walk away from the system that inherently affects us every day. And so a lot of times these stacking issues come as a result of us not being present.
Well, I'm going to say this one.
Hold on. And again, I'm not blaming the victim here. I'm just looking at the landscape of things. Trump won by, I think, like 70,000 votes. We had maybe 40 or 50,000.
Pennsylvania.
Right. And I was going to say, if we had more black folks, and again, I don't want to put this all off on black folks, right? Because white women predominantly voted for Trump. But had black folks understood what was really at stake, we could have nullified this and moved on. And it would have elevated our position of power to a place that people wouldn't even recognize today. But again, I digress. What were you about to say,
Well,
Danielle?
well, I was just going to come back to that real quick and just say this, Kamari, is that when we talk about this, a young man said to me the other day, well, I'm not voting in this election. I don't vote in the elections, but I make sure that I register Democrat or Republican, wherever I move. I register whoever the controlling party is, but he's never voted. He told me he only ever voted for Obama. And so he said, but then he was talking about how he couldn't get services in the middle of the pandemic, and that he keeps calling and he keeps writing and he keeps whatever. And he's like, I said, okay. I said, but you're a registered voter. He's like, yeah, but I'm a registered voter. I said, but you just told me you didn't vote. And he was like, yeah, what they got to do with it? I said, they actually keep a record of everybody who votes. So if you don't vote, Kamari, and I do vote, Kamari, I'm going to get my phone call returned and my services before you. And so that's when I say that we need to vote twice a year, every single year. And they're making it easier.
But you know what? Let's go back to that real quick, right? Because that's a great point that I've forgotten to bring up to all of my anti-voters. It is based on favoritism, also based on pay to play. And the pay here is the vote. Yep. And so when your elected official knows that you don't vote, you don't get attention. Again, last night I shared a video on my personal page of Kamala introducing this whole Judge Amy thing and just talking about what's at stake here. And somebody said that, voting, again, doesn't matter. Actually, several people said voting doesn't matter. But that's a perfect example of why voting does matter. And if you just look in any city, right, I'm going to use my city, Philadelphia. I am from the area where we have the largest voter turnouts. Uptown part of the city, a lot of Black middle class and working class folks, but they always turn out to vote. And when there are major issues that the community doesn't want, they don't happen. And that's because the elected officials know they have to abide by the wishes of these folks, right, wrong, or indifferent. Because voters aren't always right. It's like they say, customers are always right. Customers aren't always right either. Sometimes we make bad decisions because of lack of information. However, the elected official still is going to acknowledge the want or need of the community because they vote and they don't want that smoke.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, Charlotte. Yo, Charlotte's one of your biggest fans. She be here for you. She even said hi.
I appreciate her. You know what? Charlotte is here for the community. She is. Wherever she can get the information, she's going to get it. And we got to continue to appreciate her for that.
And I definitely appreciate this one. We need an education, period. Adrian, how you doing? I will take a vat of castor oil before I rush the vaccine. Yes.
Well, when asked at the debate, Kamala. Now I'm confusing it.
It's hard.
No, Kamala was very, very specific, and they got mad. And he was like, she won't even take the vaccine. And I'm like, ain't nobody taking the Trump vaccine. We all know that. Ain't nobody taking that.
Well, that ain't true. The Trumpettes are going to take it. So,
I feel so bad about that. I really do. They have no, not the Trump. You said the Trump vets.
Trumpettes.
No, that's not who's no. So the VA.
I'm talking about Trump supporters. The Trump supporters.
I know what you're talking about. No, who's going to take it? It's going to be the veterans.
Yes, because they're going to administer through the VA. Yes,
it's going to be the veterans. Oh, and don't forget the people who attend HBCUs, because that's actually been a part of their ongoing funding requirement now.
And testing ground. Yeah.
Yes.
Wait. What's an ongoing part of their requirement?
About the vaccine, they're going to distribute it there first because they have historically had more health issues, and we want to make sure they can continue to, get their education so they can take the vaccine. I'm so serious.
Wow. But we've also been the ones who've done the most experiments on. And speaking of HBCUs, I think everybody should go take a look at the Tuskegee experiment, which was very gruesome, very, very gruesome.
Yes. And here we are. We are going to now be the Trump vaccine testing. And the reasoning for it is because we have historically had health disparities, and that they don't want our education to be stopped any longer than necessary.
It's funny, right? Because current day Black Republicans, right? I don't want to talk about the real Republicans, because I think there's definitely a shift in the old school Republicans and they were conservative versus the new.
No. The money conservatives versus the Trumpicans. There's a difference.
Yes, thank you. So the black,
There's a
the
difference.
black Trumpicans really confuse me. I don't get it. I mean, they just had a big rally. Well, not a big rally. They made it look bigger than what it was, but they just had a rally at the White House on law and order. Like, are we
But
serious?
they were paid to be there.
I know, and I won't say her name because I hate her from the bowels of hell. But
Well,
supposedly
she
she
had to do
paid.
something because Classic then took her spot, so she had to do something to get back in the good graces. Everybody got to speak at the RNC except her.
Yeah. Well, listen, folks, I'm just going to say this, right? I'm not the guy who has a problem with party, right? Under this administration, though, the Republicans absolutely suck. But
Like I said, the Republicans.
Yeah, I'm not here for party. I am here for what's best for people, right? And so when you look at what the current administration is doing and how he's putting babies in cages, somebody actually a couple people tried to debate me and say, oh, Obama did the same thing. No, he did not. There's facts in that. You can look it up. He deported a lot of immigrants, but he did not intentionally separate them from their mothers and fathers, especially the ones that were nursing, which is happening right now under this administration. I cannot.
Or the forced hysterectomies.
Yes, and that just came out too, and the forced hysterectomies. So, which is
why I'm still trying to understand, how are you pro-life? You're pro-birth.
There is a lot of hypocrisy in this current day party, and there's a lot of blatant racism. I keep getting, again, black folks who are supposed independents who say, "How was the Trump administration racist?" And I'm like, you can go back to the 70s with the DOJ case where he. No. I was getting there.
I'm like, you just right there. I just thought.
No. But there's a 40+ year history of this. That's why I can't neglect the DOJ case. Then we come to the Central Park 5, where he ran a whole bunch of ads against them. Never apologized. Then we could talk about birtherism and a whole bunch of other things that he's done. But people are still trying to debate if he is racist or not. He clearly is. And while you. Clearly,
he's personally racist. His policies are based in racism, and more importantly, they incite racist because even if you want to say the man is or isn't, okay, let's just talk about what happens as a result of.
But wait a minute. What you said is important, right? But you can't get racist policies 9 times out of 10 if you are not a racist. So you can't really separate one from another, right? So again, I don't know where these questions are coming from, and all I can say is people aren't educating themselves, and so that's why today was really important to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to folks. Is there any other closing questions? We got time for about one more. If anybody has any questions about law, elected officials, how this could potentially impact the Black community, we're here for about 5 more minutes because we've been on for a minute, and I'm hungry. Y'all know when I get hungry, I get ready to go. Gotta get me some victuals.
Yeah, it's that time. It's almost 3.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's almost 3. Actually, no, this was a pleasure because I feel like, I'm talking to myself 9 times out of 10 all day, every day. And I had to call the 3 girlfriends to rail about this situation on the phone. But, the more people that we can educate, the more people. And, this is the thing. Anybody that has a question and wants to talk about it, it is. Oh, that's important.
Facts. The fact that he hasn't called out the white militia who plotted to kidnap and kill a governor is telling. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I was still on the next comment because I don't know who that is. So
okay. Sure who you're talking to, but your comment isn't relevant. So I'll see you later.
I was like, but anyway, that is very, very important. Is that when you talk about the militia and then wait a minute, double down on it. First, he ain't know who they were. He didn't know who they were. He's like, who? I'll say anything. Who are they? Then they're still never said anything. Then says, well, I denounce them all the time days later and still has not officially denounced them. Well, dude, I know that you know how to beat a dead horse because I heard all about birtherism, for 8 years. So I know I mean, come on, y'all are right back talking about Benghazi and emails. I'm so confused on who's actually running for president now because the Republicans are worried about Benghazi and Hillary Clinton. I'm so confused.
So I'll say this in closing. Well, Danielle, do you have anything to say in closing?
No, I really don't. I just want to really thank you for having me on. I will let the people know if you want to reach out to me, please follow my page at Danielle Patterson 4190th. Danielle is Danyl Patterson 4190th. I'm findable on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter, all of those things at Danielle Patterson. The interesting thing is you can actually just search my first name and I am the only thing that comes up in the world. So if you're just looking for Danielle, Danyl, you can find me across all social media platforms. You can also reach out to my office with any legal questions at 215-472-1833. That's 215-472-1833. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate you. And I'll just say this in closing, right? The fact that ACA is up for debate, it's going to court on November 10th, shows you the power of what's going on, shows you how to connect the dots, because this has been the plan even before Trump was in office. When I want to say it was Mitch McConnell, or maybe it was Graham, they said Obama would be a one-term president. The war has been going on, but the super war really started at that point. And that's
It started. They had an emergency meeting 3 days after the election in 2008 when Obama actually won the election. 3 days later, the Republicans had an emergency meeting and their plan of agenda.
Right, and you see what they did. They took over just about every state house and Senate. They took over Congress, or the House, and they took over the Senate and all the other smaller seats around that. So they basically were able to control and create power for themselves. And when you talk about dark money, there's a wonderful book out there called Dark Money, and it talks very much about how the right wings, especially the Koch brothers, who aren't necessarily affiliated with Donald Trump, but they have used their money and influence to change law school, syllabuses and curriculums to favor right-wing ideology. So there's a lot going on, y'all. There's a lot going on. I don't expect everybody to keep up, but you got to try. You got to stay informed. And listen, we got to vote. And not only do we have to vote, because it doesn't just stop with voting. You got to vote, and you got to keep your people accountable. You have to keep your elected officials accountable. And we also need to fund our elected officials as well. I don't care if it's $10 or $25 every 6 months. Give what you can, because this war is not a war of flesh and blood. This war is a war of principalities. That's all I have to say. I'm Kamari Ellis. Thank you for watching this edition of the Finance Rebel Show. It'll be available on the podcast very, very soon, and we'll get some clips out right away. But I'll see you all. I'll be back tomorrow with Wealthy Wednesdays, answering your money questions live. Everybody have a great, prosperous, and productive day. Bye-bye.